Have you ever found yourself thinking deeply about someone maybe late at night, maybe in the middle of a quiet moment, and then suddenly, almost as if by magic, you receive a message from them? Or maybe you're walking down the street, your thoughts lingering on that person, and their name unexpectedly shows up somewhere. A song starts playing that reminds you of them. Someone mentions them without you saying a word. You stop and wonder, how could this be? These moments often feel so precise, so emotionally charged, that calling them coincidences doesn't quite feel right. They leave you wondering if perhaps something else is happening. If, somehow, the invisible thread that once connected you to that person still exists. If they are thinking about you too, at that exact same moment. If you're both quietly resonating in the same emotional space without words, without contact, just presence. This video is for you if you've ever had that lingering feeling like someone is with you, even when they're far away. If you've ever sensed someone's emotional state without speaking to them. If you've ever wondered whether those random signs are really random, or if they're part of something bigger trying to speak to you, something beyond logic, beyond explanation. Psychiatrist Carl Jung once said, "Synchronicity is the coming together of inner and outer events, in a way that cannot be explained by cause and effect, but is meaningful to the observer." That's the heart of what we're exploring today. Jung didn't believe that such moments were just accidents. He believed they were symbols from the unconscious. He called them synchronicities, events that may seem unrelated, but which hold deep meaning when experienced by the individual. And when two people share an intense emotional connection, these synchronicities often increase. The more connected two people are, especially on a soul level, the more likely they are to experience these coincidences that defy logic. So, if you've felt something stir inside you at the exact moment someone from your past reappears, or you've experienced a sudden emotional shift that doesn't seem to belong to you, this might not be your imagination. It could be synchronicity. It could be a reflection of the emotional resonance between you and someone else. Throughout this series, we're going to explore the signs that deep, sometimes hidden, indicators that two people might be thinking about each other at the exact same moment. These signs are subtle, but powerful. They live in our dreams, our memories, in the sudden songs on the radio, in the emotions that rise without warning. They live in the silence between two people. And sometimes, they live in the moments we're about to move on just before the past taps us on the shoulder again. But before we dive in, I want to ask you something. Have you ever felt this kind of connection with someone? A bond so strong that even time, distance, and silence couldn't make it disappear completely? If you have, share a word or a story in the comments. Because this video isn't just about explaining a concept. It's about reminding you that you're not imagining things. You're not the only one who's felt something without having the words to describe it. This is not about proving whether someone still loves you. It's not about creating false hope or clinging to the past. It's about recognizing how powerful our emotional and energetic connections can be. How our inner worlds sometimes communicate through symbols, emotions, and dreams before we're even fully conscious of what they mean. This is a journey into the unconscious, into intuition, into the part of you that often knows things before your mind can catch up. And it's also a journey into empathy, into understanding how love, longing, and emotional bonds create echoes that can be felt, even when nothing is being said. And so I invite you to stay with this video, not just to learn about the signs of emotional synchronicity, but to listen more deeply to your own experiences, to those moments that felt too precise to be random, to those feelings that returned when you least expected them, to the knowing in your heart that someone, somewhere, was thinking of you too. Because once we begin to pay attention to these signs, we often realize they were always there. We just didn't have the language to name them. So if you've ever asked yourself, does he feel this too? Or is this just in my head? What you're about to hear might change how you understand those moments forever. Let's begin. In the next part, we'll dive into the first and most powerful sign that two people are emotionally connected, even when separated. The sudden emotional shifts that seem to come from nowhere but carry someone's energy with them. Before we continue, if you feel like this topic speaks to something deep inside you, consider subscribing to this channel. Here, we talk about the things that can't always be explained, but can always be felt. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, someone who's been feeling something they can't name, share this video with them. It might just be the sign they were waiting for. Now, take a breath, settle in, and let's step into the space where logic ends and the soul begins to speak. There are moments when you feel something shift inside you. A wave of anxiety, sadness, or even unexpected joy without any clear reason. Nothing in your day changed. No one said anything. But suddenly, you're overwhelmed by emotion. You pause, wondering where this came from. And later, almost too perfectly timed, you find out that someone you used to love, or someone you still feel deeply connected to, was going through something significant at that exact time. How is that possible? According to Carl Jung, the unconscious mind doesn't exist in isolation. It's not just something inside you, it's something that connects all of us. He called this the collective, unconscious, a deep, invisible network of symbols, instincts, emotions, and archetypes that we all share as human beings. It's where dreams are born, where myths are carried across cultures, and where something profound happens when two people resonate on an emotional or energetic level. This is what makes emotional synchronization possible. Think of it like this. When two people go through strong emotional experiences together, love, heartbreak, intimacy, even conflict, those emotions don't just disappear. They're stored in the unconscious, like imprints. And when those two people are emotionally tied, even unconsciously, their internal worlds can begin to tune into one another again, even from a distance, even in silence. This is emotional synchronicity. Jung didn't believe in coincidence in the way we usually define it. He believed that events we call coincidental might actually be meaningful alignments, moments where the outer world and the inner world reflect each other with perfect timing. So when you suddenly feel your heart ache, and hours later discover that he was thinking about you, missing you, or even looking at old photos of you, maybe it wasn't just a feeling. Maybe it was an emotional message, traveling between two souls still carrying the memory of one another. Let's take a step deeper. Your unconscious doesn't forget emotional impact. It stores it, echoes it, responds to it. And when someone you're connected to starts feeling strong emotions about you, those feelings can send out energetic signals. These aren't text messages or phone calls, but vibrations. They're subtle, but real. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately sensed tension, even before anyone spoke? That's energy. That's the body acting as a receiver for emotion. And when the emotional connection is strong enough, that kind of energetic transmission can happen across time and space. This is especially true if you're emotionally open. Some people are more intuitive, more sensitive to emotional undercurrents. They may not realize it, but they're often tuned into these energetic frequencies. You might suddenly feel heavy and tired, not realizing that you're absorbing the unspoken emotional state of someone who still carries you in their heart. Let's imagine a situation. You've been feeling fine, grounded, and clear-headed. Then, out of nowhere, a deep melancholy floods you. A memory of him surfaces. You feel his absence like a physical ache. You almost message him, but you don't. A few hours later, your phone lights up. It's him. He says, "I don't know why, but I've been thinking about you all day." Now, you could call this a coincidence. Or you could see it through Jung's Eisas, a synchronous moment born out of an emotional connection that still lingers in the unconscious mind. When he thinks of you with intensity, whether it's love, guilt, longing, or confusion, his emotional energy begins to move. And if that bond is still active in your unconscious, you might pick up on it. You feel it not through logic, but through emotion. Your body reacts first. Your thoughts follow. This doesn't mean that every emotional swing you experience is a message from someone else. It's important to remain grounded. Emotional resonance only happens when the connection between two people is strong, unresolved, or deeply imprinted. But if this pattern happens repeatedly, if you notice consistent emotional shifts that align with their presence or absence, their moods or messages, then it's worth paying attention. Jung often spoke of the anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine archetypes that live within each of us. When we form strong emotional bonds with others, especially in romantic relationships, we project these inner archetypes onto them. That's part of what makes the connection so intense and meaningful. And even after the relationship ends, or even if it never fully began, the emotional energy doesn't just vanish. It stays, echoing through the unconscious, like a note that keeps vibrating long after the music stops. These echoes are what we feel when synchronicity appears, when we sense someone's emotional presence, when their inner world starts rippling into ours. Sometimes it happens at night, just before we fall asleep. Sometimes it shows up as a strange heaviness when we're alone. And other times it appears in the form of emotional claritia, sudden understanding that they're thinking of you, missing you, or wrestling with feelings they can't admit. Let's talk about how these emotional synchronicities often show up in daily life. You're suddenly overwhelmed with emotion, seemingly out of nowhere. Then you see a post they've made. It's vulnerable, emotional, raw. You realize you felt something before you even knew why. You wake up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, not sure why. The next day, they tell you they couldn't sleep either, that something about you kept them awake. You get an urge to check your phone. You hesitate, then give in. There's a message from them sent just moments ago. These aren't just poetic ideas. They're psychological patterns. When two people's unconscious minds are still connected, they can begin to synchronize. Not always, and not predictably. But when it happens, it's powerful, it's real. And it's a reminder that emotional bonds aren't just mental constructs, they're energetic links. The beauty of synchronicity is that it speaks when we cannot. It allows two people who may be afraid, distant, or uncertain to still meet in symbols, in dreams, in shared emotion. It creates a space where connection survives without needing to be spoken aloud. However, emotional synchronicity is not always peaceful. Sometimes it brings up tension. You might feel uneasy, anxious, or conflicted, especially if the other person is struggling internally. Their confusion can become yours. Their longing can stir your own. That's why it's so important to remain aware of your emotional state. Ask yourself, is this truly my emotion? Or am I feeling someone else's? When you ask that question with sincerity, you often find clarity. And if the emotion feels foreign yet familiar, like something that doesn't quite belong to you but echoes within you, maybe the emotional presence of someone whose energy still lives in your unconscious. So what should you do when you notice emotional synchronization? Start by observing. Don't act impulsively. Simply notice the feeling. Write it down. See what unfolds. Does something align? Does a message come later? Does something shift in your external world? Let synchronicity be a guide, not a command. And remember this: just because someone is emotionally connected to you doesn't mean you owe them a response. Emotional resonance is a beautiful thing, but your heart deserves to be protected. You are not obligated to act on every vibration. You are simply invited to notice. In the next part, we'll explore how these emotional synchronicities often manifest not just in feelings, but in external symbol songs, names, repeated numbers, messages from the world around you that seem to whisper someone's name. We'll explore how the unconscious uses the language of signs to send messages that logic alone can't explain. Until then, trust what you feel, but stay rooted. Your soul might be speaking, and it just might be answering the call of someone who, at this very moment, is quietly thinking of you too. There are moments when the universe seems to speak in symbols, not words. You think of someone, and within minutes, you see their name written on the back of a passing truck. You walk into a store, and a song that once defined your connection with that person begins to play. Or a stranger in line next to you mentions a place only the two of you shared. You didn't say anything out loud. You weren't even looking for a sign. And yet, there it is, undeniable, precise, and emotionally charged. You pause, ask yourself if you're reading too much into it, and then feel it again. The timing, the meaning, the weight of the moment. You wonder, could this be more than coincidence? According to Carl Jung, it very well might be. Jung's concept of synchronicity was not about chance, but about meaningful connection. He defined it as the simultaneous occurrence of events that are meaningfully related, but not causally linked. That is, one event doesn't cause the other, but their emotional or symbolic alignment carries deep personal relevance. So when a song plays just as you're remembering someone, or when their name shows up in unexpected places again and again, Jung would encourage you not to dismiss it. These are not just random events. They are potentially symbolic reflections of what's happening in your unconscious emotional truths trying to rise to the surface. In relationships, especially those that are unresolved or deeply emotional, synchronicity tends to intensify. That's because the unconscious mind is not silent. It speaks through dreams, symbols, signs, and external patterns. When two people are emotionally connected, even in silence, even across distance, their inner worlds can align in ways that ripple outward into the physical world. Let's look at the signs, those so-called coincidences that might actually be messages. One of the most common is the sudden appearance of their name. It could be on a page of a book you randomly open, in the credits of a movie, or in a passing conversation. You're not searching for it, but it's there. Not once, but repeatedly, and each time it strikes a chord inside you. Another common sign is music. A song you once shared begins to play just as you're thinking of them. Or you hear lyrics that perfectly describe your emotional state right at the moment you're struggling with thoughts of them. Music is deeply tied to emotion, and the unconscious often uses it as a way to speak when words fail. Then there are numbers. Repeating numbers, 11, 11, 22, 22, 3, 33 start appearing at key moments. You might see these on clocks, receipts, addresses, or license plates. While these numbers may seem generic, the timing of their appearance often isn't. They tend to show up when your emotions are heightened, when you're contemplating them, or when you're at an emotional crossroads. Jung believed that numbers held archetypal meaning in the unconscious. They are universal symbols. And when they appear repeatedly in emotionally significant moments, they serve as reminders, not just of the person you're thinking about, but of the inner process you're going through, the transformation, the awakening, the unresolved story that's asking to be seen. You might also encounter their birth date, initials, or symbols related to shared memories. You might overhear someone say the same phrase they used to say to you, or you might see an image, a place, a setting, a color that transports you back to a moment you thought you had forgotten. These signs often cluster around moments of emotional decision, when you're thinking about reaching out, when you're close to letting go, when you're on the verge of moving forward. That's when the signs intensify, because the unconscious isn't passive, it responds. And if there is still emotional energy between you and someone else, that connection can surface through these mirrored moments. But there's something important to understand. Not every repeated symbol is a message from the universe. Sometimes, the mind can project meaning where none exist, especially when we're longing for a sign. That's why self-awareness is essential. Ask yourself, how does this sign make me feel? Does it bring clarity or confusion? Does it ground me or leave me spinning? A true synchronicity carries emotional truth. It resonates not with fear or desperation, but with recognition. It feels like something inside you is being acknowledged. Let's explore an example. A woman shared a story of thinking about an old love during a particularly emotional week. They hadn't spoken in years, but she felt an unusual intensity that made her pause. That same day, she saw his full name first and last on a billboard for a local business. The next day, she received a Facebook memory of a photo the two of them had taken years ago. And that night, their song came on the radio while she was driving. She didn't reach out, but in that moment, she said, It felt like something was being confirmed, not logically, emotionally, energetically. This is the emotional language of synchronicity. For some people, these signs act as guides, pulling them toward healing, resolution, or reconnection. For others, they serve as gentle reminders of unfinished emotional work, things that were left unsaid, love that was never fully expressed, or wounds that never got the chance to heal. The purpose of these signs isn't to tell you what to do, it's to help you feel what you've been avoiding, to reconnect you with your emotional truth. And when that truth involves another person, sometimes you'll find that they're experiencing similar signs too. They may be dreaming of you, hearing your name, or feeling your presence without understanding why. This is the part of synchronicity that can't be measured, but is often deeply felt. You might both be receiving messages from the same emotional field at the same time. Your unconscious minds, still tied together by shared history and feeling, might be resonating like two instruments playing the same note from across the room. That's why synchronicities often feel intimate. They feel like whispers from something deeper, a knowing that goes beyond the surface. And once you begin to notice them, it's hard to ignore them. So how do you navigate this? First, be present. Don't dismiss what feels meaningful to you. Your feelings are valid, and your experiences matter. Second, write things down. Track the signs. See if there's a pattern. Sometimes the act of observing can lead to powerful insight. Third, reflect instead of reacting. Just because you see a sign doesn't mean you have to act on it immediately. Use it as an opportunity to ask yourself what you truly want, what you're truly feeling, and what still needs closure or healing inside you. Finally, trust your intuition, but stay grounded in your self-worth. The universe may send signs, but your path still belongs to you. Your choices, your healing, your peace, those are sacred. Synchronicities are invitations, not instructions. They open a door between the inner and outer world. They remind us that love, memory, and energy don't simply vanish. They leave traces, and sometimes they come back to us in the form of signs so precise. They feel like a secret message, written just for us. In the next part, we'll step into the realm of dreams, the most powerful and symbolic expression of the unconscious. We'll explore how dreams can reflect the emotional connection between two people, even when they've stopped talking, even when one of them is trying to forget. Because when the soul can't speak, it begins to dream. There are moments when the most powerful conversations never take place in waking life, but unfold quietly in our dreams. You might wake up with the lingering presence of someone you haven't seen in years. A dream so vivid, it feels more like a memory than imagination. Sometimes you speak, sometimes you simply stand in silence. But the emotion remains raw, intense, impossible to shake. And you wonder, why now? Why him? According to Carl Jung, dreams are not meaningless flickers of a tired mind. They are the voice of the unconscious, expressing truths our conscious minds may not be ready to face. For Jung, every dream is a message, a symbolic story crafted not by logic, but by emotional reality. And when two people share a deep emotional bond, their unconscious minds often echo each other even in dreams. This is why dreaming about someone you're emotionally connected to is rarely random. The timing, the imagery, the feelings, these elements carry weight. They reflect something unresolved, something that still lives between you, even if no words have been exchanged in a long time. Sometimes, these dreams come during transitions when you're trying to move on, or when you're close to opening your heart again. The unconscious responds to such emotional thresholds with images, memories, and symbolic reminders. And when the connection between you and someone else is strong, those reminders may involve them, even if they haven't been part of your waking life for months or years. The most important thing to understand is that dreams speak in symbols, not facts. The person who appears in your dream may not be there as they are in reality, but as a representation of what they meant to you: love, longing, protection, rejection, awakening. Jung called these representations archetypes, emotionally charged images that carry universal meaning. For example, if you dream of him holding your hand, while everything around you is in chaos, that image might not be about literal reconciliation. It might symbolize your inner desire for stability, connection, or emotional safety. But if that dream comes with a deep sense of peace, it could also reflect a genuine energetic connection still alive between you, something unfinished or unspoken, still echoing through the unconscious. Now, let's consider a powerful phenomenon. Many people report recurring dreams. If you dream of the same person again and again, especially in emotionally charged ways, it is likely that your unconscious is processing unresolved feelings. This doesn't mean you need to be with that person. It means there is something emotionally significant that hasn't been fully expressed, integrated, or released. Even more fascinating are what some call mirror dreams or shared themes. These occur when two people dream about each other around the same time. They may not know it, they may never speak of it, but their emotional connection manifests similarly in their unconscious landscapes. Jung wouldn't call this telepathy, but he would say it reflects synchronicity and the psychic connection that can exist between two individuals whose emotional realities remain intertwined. This kind of dream-based resonance isn't just romantic. It can occur in relationships where there is unfinished emotional work, deep gratitude, forgiveness waiting to be offered, or even grief that never found its voice. When two people share a strong energetic history, their dreams can act as messengers between their inner worlds. Jung also introduced the concept of the anima and animus, the inner feminine in men, and the inner masculine in women. If you have a deep emotional connection with a man, and he begins to dream about you, it may be because you are embodying his inner anima. In his dreams, you might appear not as yourself, but as a symbolic representation of love, emotional truth, or even transformation. You become a mirror of what his soul is trying to integrate. He may never fully understand why he dreams of you. He might not even remember the dream. But on a deeper level, something within him is processing your impact. Likewise, when you dream of him, you might be engaging not only with his memory, but with your own inner journey. He might represent something you need to reclaim: strength, vulnerability, closure, truth. The dream becomes a dialogue, not just between two people, but between your present self and the emotional imprint he left behind. There's also a certain timing to these dreams. They often show up when we least expect them, right before making a big life decision, just as we begin to feel free, or when we sense something shifting in the energy around us. Sometimes the dream feels like a warning. Sometimes it feels like comfort. But either way, it feels real because it is. Even science acknowledges that dreams can reflect emotional processing. During REM sleep, the brain integrates emotional experiences. That's why we often dream vividly after emotionally intense days. But when two people are thinking of each other, consciously or not, and their feelings are unresolved or still emotionally charged, their unconscious minds can intersect. And dreams become the space where those feelings are finally acknowledged. The question then is not just, why am I dreaming of him? But, what is this dream trying to tell me about my own heart? Is it asking you to let go, or to open up, to forgive, or to speak? Is it offering closure, or revealing that there is still something alive in the bond? It's important to approach these dreams with curiosity, not fear. Write them down. Pay attention to the emotions, the colors, the symbols. Over time, patterns may appear, and with those patterns, insight. Some people are afraid to admit how much a dream can affect them. They brush it off. But deep down, they know it mattered. They know it meant something. Not necessarily about the future, but about the present state of their soul. If you wake up from a dream about someone with a sense of clarity or calm, that's a sign the unconscious has delivered a message. If you wake up with tears, longing, or confusion, that too is a message something is stirring, and it's worth listening to. The soul speaks when we dream. It speaks of truth, longing, release, connection, pain, and love. And when that voice echoes with the presence of another person, You are witnessing one of the most intimate expressions of emotional synchronicity. In the next part, we'll explore how your energy shifts when someone is thinking about you, and how your body and intuition often sense their presence long before the mind understands what's happening. Because the soul doesn't just speak in dreams. It moves through emotion, sensation, and instinct, and it often knows the truth before you do. Sometimes, the most deafening sound is silence. When the messages stop, when the calls fade, when the connection that once felt so alive vanishes without a trace. But instead of relief or clarity, what remains is a weight, a strange vibrating presence in the absence of words. You lie awake and wonder if nothing is being said. Why does it still feel like something is happening? Not all silence is empty. Some silence carries the unspoken, the withheld, the emotional residue of what was once deeply felt but never fully expressed. And often, that silence says more than words ever could. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious never truly forgets. It stores emotion, memory, tension, and desire in quiet, unseen places. Even when someone disappears from your daily life, they can still remain within your emotional field, especially if the connection was intense, unresolved, or left unfinished. In this context, silence becomes more than just the absence of communication. It becomes a vessel for emotional energy. Many people report feeling a heightened emotional sensitivity during times of disconnection. You may be going through your day, seemingly fine, and suddenly feel a pull in your chest, a fog in your thoughts. You sense their presence without seeing them, as if they're just out of reach, standing in the shadows of your emotional world. These moments are not random. They're often responses to a shared emotional undercurrent connection that continues to move between you and the other person. Even without contact, you might find yourself dreaming of them again, thinking of them at odd hours, feeling their name linger on your tongue for no reason. And then, curiously, you discover they've posted something cryptic, or they've liked a post of yours after weeks of silence, or someone you both know casually brings them up. What is that? Coincidence? Or is it emotional energy breaking through the silence? Jung would say, it's the unconscious responding to unconscious. When there's a strong emotional bond, even silence carries resonance. It is not an absence, but a holding space, an emotional field that both people contribute to intentionally or not. And if one person is thinking intensely of the other, the energy often travels, manifesting in subtle but palpable ways. The silence between two people who once shared love or emotional depth is rarely neutral. It is often charged thick with the things unsaid, the words withheld, the decisions delayed. You might not be speaking, but the connection is still breathing underneath. This is why the end of communication doesn't always bring peace. Instead, it can leave a kind of energetic residue, a sense of unfinished business, a feeling that the story hasn't really ended. And if you're sensitive to this, you might start noticing signs that something is still moving in that silence. You may feel mood shifts without explanation. You may find yourself pulled to their social media without knowing why. Or you might feel their emotional state as if it were your own anxiety, sadness, even warmth. It can come in waves, uninvited and unexplainable. You might dismiss it at first, but when these shifts happen in sync with their behavior or reappearances, it becomes harder to deny. Jung spoke often of the field created by emotional relationships. It's not just about memories or shared experiences. It's about emotional energy stored in the psyche. That energy doesn't just disappear when contact ends. It lingers, especially if the bond was emotionally intense, or if closure never came. That's why silence can feel so loud. Because you're not just sitting in absence. You're sitting in a space charged with potential, memory, tension, and longing. And when the other person is also sitting in that same space consciously or unconsciously, something subtle begins to move. Sometimes, that movement leads to reconnection. Sometimes, it leads to dreams, symbols, or a resurfacing of memories that feel inexplicably present. And other times, it leads to growth and internal awakening that begins to show you who you've become through the space between you. It's important to understand that these moments are not always signals to act. Sometimes, they are simply invitations to listen more deeply to yourself. The silence may be reflecting what still lives within you. It may be asking you to face your own emotional truth, to see what parts of you still belong to that connection, and to decide what you're truly ready for. But what if you feel certain that he's thinking about you too? That the silence is not indifference, but uncertainty? What if every part of you feels that the connection is still alive, even if he won't say it? In many cases, you're right. The other person may be feeling the same pull, the same emotional echoes, but fear, pride, confusion, or timing can keep people from reaching out. The silence becomes a defense, a delay, a space where emotions ferment, waiting for clarity. You may not hear from him, but if you're experiencing synchronicities, energetic shifts, or a strong sense of his presence, it's very possible that his inner world is still connected to yours. Still, the most important thing to remember is this: silence doesn't always mean you're being forgotten. Sometimes, it means someone is wrestling with what they feel. Sometimes, it means they don't yet have the language to speak what's in their heart. And sometimes, it means the universe is giving both of you space to become who you need to be before you can come together again, or before you can finally let go in peace. So if you're in a period of silence now, and you feel that presence still lingering, don't rush to erase it. Don't rush to fill the void. Sit with it, feel it, let it teach you. Because within that silence, there may be a message. Not just from him, but from your own soul. In the next part, we'll explore what happens when intuition goes one step further, when you sense that someone will come back, and then they do. We'll dive into how the unconscious can sometimes anticipate emotional returns before they arrive, and how that quiet knowing might not be wishful thinking, but a form of truth that only the heart can understand. There is a moment that many people recognize, a moment when you finally begin to let go, when you tell yourself, truly this time, that it's over. You clear your space, you stop checking your phone, you feel the fog lifting. And just as you're beginning to breathe differently, he reappears. A message, a call, a memory reignited by a sudden encounter. It's not just a feeling, it's real. And it always seems to happen right when your heart is on the verge of release. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious mind has a way of anticipating movements that the conscious mind has yet to process. He called this anticipatory function of the unconscious a kind of inner knowing something, not based on logic or evidence, but on emotional resonance. In other words, before something happens in the outer world, your inner world may already be reacting to it. This is not about predicting the future in a mystical sense, but about being so attuned to another person's energy that you begin to sense their emotional shift 7 before they act on them. When you've shared a deep connection with someone, your intuition can pick up on the subtle vibrations of their presence long before they step back into your life. It often starts with a pull, a quiet awareness. Maybe you dream of him after months of silence. Maybe you start thinking of him again, not out of longing, but with a sense of inevitability. You feel his name rise in your mind, not with pain, but with clarity. Something is coming. And then it happens. He shows up. Maybe not in a dramatic way. Maybe it's just a text that reads, "Hey," or a story view, or a song he shares that meant something to both of you. But it lands with the same emotional weight as a thunderclap. You weren't imagining it. Your soul was preparing you. Take, for example, a woman who shared this story. After months of working through heartbreak, she finally reached a place of peace. She began to focus on herself. Her heart no longer ached the way it used to. And one morning, she woke up with an unshakable sense that something was shifting. That night, she had a dream of him calm, quiet, and different somehow. She brushed it off. But 3 days later, he called. He said, "I don't know why, but I've been thinking about you. I just felt like I had to talk to you." She didn't tell him about the dream, but she didn't need to. She knew. Her intuition had spoken first. His voice only confirmed what her soul already understood. These experiences are more common than we admit. The moment you stop clinging is often the moment the energy between you clears. When your heart opens to possibility not control you, allow space for connection to move again. That space often invites the other person in, whether they understand why they're reaching out or not. Jung believed that meaningful events are rarely random. When a person reappears at the exact moment you're ready to forget them, it might not be a coincidence. It might be synchronicity, an inner alignment between your emotional release and their emotional return. But what you do with that return is up to you. The fact that someone comes back doesn't mean you must open the door. What matters is that you trust the timing of your intuition, that you recognize when your soul is warning you or preparing you for what's to come. Sometimes they come back because something in them is still reaching for closure. Sometimes they come back because love never left. And sometimes they come back just to remind you how far you've come. In the next part, we'll explore how their emotional presence still affects you, even in their absence. How someone who no longer speaks to you can still move your heart and what that says about the kind of connection you once had and may still carry within you. What we often call a feeling, a pull in the chest, a whisper in the quiet, a dream that lingers is sometimes something much deeper. It is not just an emotion passing through. It is a form of communication, a language that does not speak in words, but in symbols, energy, and silence. And when two people are truly connected, this language does not disappear when the conversation ends. It speaks on. Throughout this journey, we've explored the subtle, powerful signs that someone might be thinking of you just as you are thinking of them. We've looked at the emotional shifts, the synchronicities, the dreams, and the strange sense of presence that comes without a phone call or message. These experiences are not simply imagination. According to Carl Jung, they are expressions of the unconscious, your inner world, reaching beyond the boundaries of logic to speak with another. Connection, in this deeper sense, is not about constant communication. It's not about proof or certainty. It's about resonance. The way your emotions respond to someone without explanation. The way your energy changes when they enter your thoughts. The way the world seems to echo their name when you are trying to forget. These are not accidents. They are moments where something invisible becomes briefly visible. The beauty of this kind of connection is that it defies time and space. Even when someone is far away, even when the relationship has changed or ended, if the bond was real, if it touched the soul, then some part of it remains alive. It may not always mean you're meant to be together, but it does mean that what you shared mattered. It left a mark. It continues to speak in the quietest of ways. So if you're feeling something you can't explain, if someone keeps appearing in your mind, in your dreams, in your life's subtle patterns, listen. Don't chase it. Don't force it. Just listen. There may be something your soul is trying to say, or something it is already hearing, because connection is not always a story told out loud. Sometimes it is a frequency you feel in your body, a memory that refuses to fade, a stillness that is somehow full, and sometimes it is a language both hearts understand, even if the lips remain silent. Thank you for walking through this journey. If this spoke to something inside you, if you recognized your own experience in these words, know that you are not alone. The language of the soul is quiet, but it is never weak, and the connections we carry when true never fully leave us. They simply learn to speak in new ways.